Welcome to the Obedient Rogue's Reflections on the readings for the 17th Sunday after Pentecost in the Old Calendar. The Gospel for this Sunday begins with a learned Pharisee asking Jesus, "Master, which is the greatest commandment of the law?" Jesus replies, "Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with thy whole heart, and with thy whole soul, and with thy whole mind. This is the greatest and the first commandment. And the second is like to this, Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments depends the whole law and the prophets." The next line reads, "And the Pharisees being gathered together." Here it is helpful to look broadly at the context of this chapter. It appears that both the Sadducees and the Pharisees are coming together to take a crack at Jesus. Perhaps they are motivated by dual purposes. First, to expose Jesus as a fraud, and second, to outperform their rival faction through superior debate. In the Haydock Bible commentary, it says, "The Pharisees assembled themselves together that they might confound him by their numbers, whom they could not by their arguments." It appears that the Pharisees are relying on the old axiom, strength in numbers. I observe this strategy frequently when working in a high school. When requesting something from a teacher, how often does a student bring along a friend as backup? In trials big and small, we are comforted to know that we are not alone. In fact, the Pharisees are practicing a type of political virtue. In a democracy, it is necessary to build coalitions of supporters to advance your cause. It is not only necessary, but a praiseworthy achievement in the sphere of world affairs. In military affairs, which general would not welcome more troops into his camp on the eve of battle? Even the beasts in the animal kingdom must account for the number in their pack before picking a fight. The Pharisees seek strength in numbers, one of the most basic facts of the natural order. However, there is one general who did send troops away from his camp on the eve of battle. In Judges 7:2, the Lord told Gideon, "You have too many soldiers with you for me to drop Midian into their hands," because Israel would become arrogant and say, "It was my own abilities that delivered me." Through a series of reductions, Gideon sent away an army of over 30,000 soldiers and was left with only 300 remaining. In the principles of both nature and politics, this is utterly foolish. However, God did not come to create worldly kingdoms. As he stood before Pontius Pilate in John 18:36, Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would certainly strive that I should not be delivered to the Jews, but now my kingdom is not from hence." St. Paul teaches us that we must cast what we know about political virtues aside. In his letter to the Ephesians, he states, "Brethren, I, a prisoner of the Lord, beseech you that you walk worthy of the vocation in which you are called, with all humility and mildness, with patience, supporting one another in charity, careful to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace." There is a great satisfaction in conquering through power the structures of the world. However, St. Paul reminds us that we receive our dignity not from our achievements, but from our inheritance of God's grace. He does not boast of being a conqueror, but a prisoner. For the Christian, strength does not lie in numbers. Just as Gideon learned, our strength lies in the one true God. St. Paul continues, "One body and one Spirit, as you are called in one hope of your calling, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is above all, and through all, and in us all, who is blessed forever and ever." We have been called above the ways of the world. God has granted us something greater than nature. It is no longer appropriate to seek the ways of the natural. We must focus on the supernatural. Our calling is new and must be accompanied with a new set of virtues: humility, mildness, patience, charity, unity, and peace. Christians are bound by the mystery that Christ is one. Through him, we too are one. This is a mystery worth reflecting on. St. Cyprian writes of the unity of the Church. He says, "There is one God, and one Christ, and one Church, and one chair by our Lord's voice founded upon Peter. To set up another altar, or to constitute another priesthood, besides the one altar and the one priesthood, is impossible. Whosoever gathereth elsewhere scattereth. It is adulterous, it is impious, it is sacrilegious. Whatsoever is instituted by man to the breach of God's disposition, get ye far from such men. They are blind, and the leaders of the blind." Let us not be guilty of rebellion in the kingdom of heaven. The gospel leaves us with one more mystery to savor. Jesus asks, "What do you think of Christ? Whose son is he?" They were anticipating the Messiah to be the son of David. They knew the Messiah to be the Son of God. They did not know him to be God. Jesus silences the crowd with one question. If David then called him Lord, how is he his son? Jesus shows us another layer of the mystery of his unity. He is the son of David, and he is the Lord of David. This is a blatant contradiction. However, he is Christ, in whom nothing is impossible. As G.K. Chesterton says, that a Christian is one who accepts the truth wherever it is found. He says, if he saw two truths that seemed to contradict each other, he would take the two truths and the contradiction along with them.